You're listening to True White Collar Crime. It's a show about legendary crimes and the people behind them. White collar crimes. I'm Sean McKenna, and I'm joined by Madison Albert. And each week, we'll tackle the story of a crazy crime and what went down. Let's get into it.
Word.
The year was 1881. The date, October the 8th. Vincenzo Perugia emerged from the womb in Dumenza, Varese, Italy. By the time he was done growing, Vincenzo stood a towering 5'3". What are you doing with the camera?
Vincenzo was an inch taller than me.
He was. He was a giant. He moved to Paris in 1908 and found himself a job at a museum you may have heard of. The Louvre. The Louvre. Have you been there?
Yeah.
All right. It's a good spot. On August 21st, 1911, Perugia ventured into his day job at the Louvre. He was dressed in a white smock, the standard uniform that many of the Louvre employees wore. There's some dispute about this next part, or about this part. Some say he ventured in the night before, not at the museum style. Other sources say he strolled in for work the morning of, but we're going to go with morning of. On this day, he wasn't just an ordinary employee. On this day, he would pull off arguably the greatest art heist of the 20th century.
Dun,
All
dun.
right, this one's a tough. In the Salon Carré, I think, one of the rooms inside the Louvre, there hung a pretty famous painting you may have heard of. It was called the Mona Lisa. What? Today, it was on Vincenzo's radar. When no one was looking, Vincenzo took the painting off of the pegs that held it to the wall and brought it to an extremely discreet staircase. He took the painting out of the frame and used his smock to hide it while he made his escape. Unfortunately for him, the door he planned to use was locked. He quickly tried to take apart the doorknob, but while he was hard at work, he was approached by a plumber that worked at the museum. But instead of catching Vincenzo red-handed, the plumber thought he was just a museum worker who was stuck, so he helped him get the door open. That's a tough day at the office for that guy.
Yeah, that's rough.
That's rough. You're aiding and abetting. The next day at the museum, no one really had any idea what had happened. It was not out of the ordinary for paintings to be taken down from the wall, so the museum could take a few pictures or maybe clean the art. Eventually, an artist who wanted to see the painting asked the staff where it was. When the guards went to check and couldn't find it, the police were called and the search was officially on. One of the museum officials made a public statement. In it, he said, "The Mona Lisa is gone. Thus far, we haven't a clue as to who might have committed this crime."
No cameras back then.
No cameras. And they just trusted everybody. If you wanted to take it down, honestly, I read something when I was doing the research, and they said the main concern was about vandalism. So they would do everything to keep people from damaging the art, but they had never had anybody steal something of that magnitude before.
If you stole something and tried to sell it, you have like a limited audience, like a limited clientele, because whoever buys it, they're just gonna have to keep it to themselves. Like if they get caught with it, they're just as much trouble as you are, you know?
Yeah, it's not going to be good. That's true. Yeah, it's just those rich people. But yeah, you're right. It's tough to sell. Go get them. Eventually, an artist who... Oh, wait, no. I already read that. People in France were not happy campers, as you can imagine. The police searched vehicles, travelers headed out of the country, and even people walking on the street. They also put up wanted posters of the Mona Lisa just around and offered a reward, I think, which means kind of like a lost or missing poster. And police initially suspected poet Guillaume Apollinaire because his assistant had stolen 2 statues from the Louvre for him previously. For some reason, Apollinaire narked on his friend Pablo Picasso, who bought the statues from him so he could paint some paintings of them. But both of them were later acquitted because they didn't do it, and there wasn't any evidence that it was them.
Wait, he sold something to Pablo Picasso?
Yeah, this random guy, he was a poet, and he had his assistant steal a couple statues from there just because he wanted them. And then he sold them to Picasso because Picasso wanted to paint a little something of them. But they didn't do it. They
That's
didn't.
wild.
I know. Yeah, he narked on Picasso. Picasso was kind of a strange dude. But I digress.
This bottle, not this specific one, but this company is from 1870. It's more around
Really?
your time zone of the story.
Whoa.
Brought it in for
Yeah.
effect, you know. This is what they were
Dang,
doing
yeah.
back then.
Oh yeah, they were around.
Yep.
They were slinging whiskey back when the Lou was slinging some art.
Yep. They were drinking whiskey out the bottle, not thinking about tomorrow.
All right. So Perugia, meanwhile, he had to lay low and keep the painting hidden. As you mentioned, you got to keep that discreet. Not many people can buy it. So of course, he kept it at his apartment in a trunk, which allegedly had a secret compartment in it. When police came around to question him, he just said he'd been working somewhere else on the day of the robbery, so there was no way he could have been the thief. How about that? No cameras, like you said. You could just say you were somewhere and they had to believe you. Write it down on
Work.
paper, locked in. After 2 years, the police still did not have a real lead. Perugia kept the Mona Lisa locked away in the trunk in his apartment until one day, in December 1913, it was time to return to his homeland, the great country of Italy. He contacted art dealer Alfredo Jerry, I think, or Gary, and told him about his plan to bring the Mona
Gary.
Lisa to Italy. Geri. I'm not sure. He used the fake name Leonard. Gary brought his friend Giovanni Poggi, 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 in on the meeting as well. Poggi was the director of the Uffizi Gallery at the time. When Perugia brought out the Mona Lisa, the two men could not believe what they were seeing. They told Perugia they would procure the painting for 500,000 lire. So I got one estimate from a sketchy online historical currency calculator, and it put it at about $2 million in today's money, which is a lot, but it's like it's the Mona Lisa. You know what I mean? I don't know.
I bet
But
people would pay $1 billion for that.
yeah, that's true. Yeah, I know. But yeah, it's like who are the buyers? Could be these guys. But they were just playing him. They knocked on him on December 11th, 1913, and Perugia was arrested. The Italians brought the Mona Lisa around Italy for a while, but gave the painting back to the Louvre in January 1914. It was now time for Perugia to face the music and go on trial. He said he had stolen the painting because he loved his country, and he was upset that Napoleon had taken the piece from Italy. That was his thing back in the day when he was running the show. He'd go in and take some stuff, bring it back to the Louvre. But that is not really what happened in this case. Back in the day in 1516, Da Vinci brought the painting to France, and the French king bought it from him. But that didn't stop a lot of Italians from thinking of Perugia as a national hero. And Vincenzo was sentenced to 1 year in prison, but he actually got out after 7 months because he won his appeal. And during the trial, it was kind of crazy. It was one of those where like women were sending him like all these stuff, like flowers, and they were like writing him letters and stuff because he was like a little
Serial
celebrity.
killers.
Yeah, he had a little celebrity action because they always thought of him as a national hero from like taking something back from France and repossessing it. So he's a living
So,
legend.
fun fact. In 1962, the Mona Lisa was assessed at $100 million.
Whoa,
So, taking into account inflation, in 2019, that would be worth around 850 million.
dang. Yeah, and I'm still not sure about my lyre to dollars conversion calculator from whatever early 1900s to today, but yeah, if you were trying to sling it for 2 million in today's money, that's not a great deal.
I'd take out a loan.
Yeah,
You can buy that Mona Lisa.
I know. Give me that. Give me that. All right, where were we?
So we had fans,
He
fanboys.
had fans. He had mad fans. And after getting out of prison, he served in the Italian army for a while during World War One, and eventually returned to Paris, which was a very bold move, in my opinion. He died there in 1947. Perugia's theft made the Mona Lisa even more famous than it already was. After the painting was returned to the Louvre, 120,000 people came to see it over the next 48 hours. Today, around 8 million people come to see the Mona Lisa each year. So honestly, before it was stolen, it was semi-famous, but it wasn't what it was. A lot of people were writing articles about it and hyping it up so much, and people actually came to see the bare pegs where it was hung. People would come in, and there was like a line forming to see like where it used to be before it was stolen.
Do you
It
know
was
how
literally,
big the Mona Lisa is?
yeah, it's not crazy.
It's like the size of your computer screen.
I still
Maybe
paid to see
maybe
it.
double. Double the
It's
size of your
true.
computer screen.
Yeah, it's not huge. But yeah, it didn't used to be as famous. It just got so hyped because of this theft. So honestly, a lot of people estimate that this whole scenario made the Louvre millions of dollars because of the number of people that come to see the painting now.
Yeah.
So pretty nuts. Our boy had a good run.
Thank you,
Side hustle at the
Vincenzo.
museum didn't work out. He was almost a millionaire, but trusted the wrong people.
Okay, so questions. If you stole the Mona Lisa,
Yep.
you have it in your possession. Hardest part is
Mhm.
getting it out of there.
Yep.
So now what would you do? Where
Ooh,
would you
differently.
like who would first of all, where would you put it, you know?
Yeah. If you take that to America, I feel like there's definitely somebody buying that from you and not asking any questions. If you had it authenticated,
Yeah. Tell
that's
me
a
who's
big
gonna
trip.
authenticate it.
That's a big trip. Um, or you could probably sell it back to the Louvre, maybe.
And then you would get a life sentence.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, you definitely want to get out of France. I feel like it wouldn't have been that hard to get out of France, especially if you laid low for 2 years. If you laid low for a year, you're golden. I think you go anywhere you want.
It's not even that big.
I feel like
Back,
UK, somebody's buying that. Somebody's
yeah,
buying that. The British Museum.
back then, no cameras, so
Mhm.
they don't really know what you look like. You know how hard it was to find like robbers back then?
Oh yeah, no, they don't find them. They don't find you.
Murder trials were like, what evidence? You could
No, no,
sue
no,
the
yeah.
person and get away with it. Now,
Eyewitnesses everything. There's no forensics either. No fingerprints, nothing like that.
exactly.
It was
So
just like, oh, Bob thinks he saw him.
you spit on them.
Yeah, that's it. You throw them in the water. If they float, they're guilty. If they sink, they're not. Yeah, I probably would go. You want to go to a country that is going to buy it and not double cross you, which
Yeah,
is tough.
you would also like back then. What would I do? I would just
Sell it to John Paul Getty.
yeah.
He had so much money. Yeah,
The images, like what is who's
he's
John?
uh, he's just a rich dude. Did you see All the Money in the World?
No.
It's a pretty good movie, but it originally had Kevin Spacey in it. Then they reshot everything to replace him, and it's just this really rich guy who all he cares about is money. So
I
he would
would
have bought it for sure.
I would probably like but the thing is, you ask people, like you really can't ask more than one person.
Mm-hmm.
Because if that person says no, they could just
That's true.
you have to
It's
find that
risky.
one person. Like one person. That's
You
it.
probably go Carnegie or Rockefeller. Try and get
Really? I
them.
was about to say Carnegie.
Yeah,
Get that steal money.
those are the only guys that are savage enough to buy it and not say anything. Just keep it in their house and just look at it every once in a while, like a pride thing.